The morning air felt different at Nexus Prime Academy. Students from 12 different worlds sat in their advanced xenobiology classroom, but today something was wrong. The usual chatter had stopped. Even the loudest students sat quietly in their seats. Professor Zektar walked into the room on his 8 long legs. His multiple eyes looked at each student as he moved to the front. The arachnoid teacher was tall and thin, with dark skin that looked like it was made of metal. When he spoke, his voice came out in a low buzz. "Students, we have a new member joining our class today," Professor Zektar said. He pressed a button on his desk. "Please come in." The door made a soft sound as it opened. A figure walked through and the entire room went silent. It was a human. Jake Martinez stepped into the classroom and looked around. He was not very tall or very short. His brown hair was neat and clean. He wore the same blue uniform that all students wore. Nothing about him looked special or dangerous, but every student in the room knew what he was. He was from Earth. A death world. Jake smiled at the class and raised his hand in a wave. "Hey everyone, I'm Jake. I'm really excited to learn with all of you." His voice was warm and friendly. He did not sound like a killer from a world where everything tried to kill everything else. But the stories about humans were everywhere in the galaxy. Tila, a blue-skinned Delphinian, sat in the 3rd row. Her large black eyes were wide with fear. She had gills on her neck that moved fast when she was scared. Next to her sat her best friend, another Delphinian named Naya. Both of them had heard the stories about humans. "They come from a world covered in poisoned plants," Tila whispered to Naya. "And animals with teeth as long as my arm. The weather tries to kill them every day." Naya nodded. Her webbed fingers shook a little. "I heard they can break bones with their bare hands, and they never stop fighting even when they are hurt." In the back of the room, Vex sat with his arms crossed. The Cathara student was bigger than most others in the class. His body was covered in hard plates that looked like armor. His compound eyes could see in many directions at once. In his culture, only the strongest survived. He looked at Jake and felt confused. This cannot be right, Vex thought to himself. Humans are supposed to be the great warriors of the galaxy. This one looks weak. He looked soft. Vex's mandibles clicked together. This was something Cathara did when they were thinking hard or getting angry. Other students knew this sound and moved away from him. Professor Zektar pointed to an empty seat near the front. "Jake, you can sit next to Amy. She is also from Earth." Amy Chen had been at Nexus Prime for 2 years. She was the only other human most students had ever seen. Amy was quiet and studied hard. She helped other students with their work and never caused trouble. But even Amy made some students nervous. Jake walked to his seat and sat down. Amy looked at him and smiled, but her smile looked worried. "Hi," Amy said quietly. "Welcome to Nexus Prime. It's good to see another human here." "Thanks," Jake said. He put his bag on the floor and looked around the room. "Everyone seems really nice." Amy's smile became more worried. She leaned close to Jake and spoke very quietly. "Jake, you need to be careful here. A lot of students are afraid of humans. They think we are all violent and dangerous. Try not to do anything that might scare them." Jake looked surprised. "Scare them? Why would I scare anyone?" "Because of the stories," Amy said. "Stories about Earth and what humans can do. Most of them have never met a human before. They only know the scary stories." Professor Zektar started the class. "Today we will study the plant life of Kepler 442b. This planet has some of the most interesting flowering species in our galaxy." Jake opened his notebook and started taking notes. He asked good questions and listened carefully to the answers. When other students spoke, he looked at them and nodded. He seemed interested in everything they said. During the break, some students left the room quickly. Others stayed but watched Jake from far away. A few brave students came closer. "Is it true that humans can see in the dark?" asked Pip, a small furry student from Altair 7. Jake laughed. "Not really. We can see a little bit in low light, but not like some animals. We need flashlights just like everyone else." "But you can run for days without stopping?" asked another student. "Well, some humans can run very far," Jake said. "But I get tired just like everyone else. I like to run, but I have to rest too." Vex listened to these questions from across the room. He did not like what he heard. The other students were starting to relax around Jake. But Vex knew that appearances could lie. In his world, the most dangerous predators often looked harmless until they attacked. He is hiding something, Vex thought. No deathworlder is this soft. He must be pretending to be weak. When class ended, Jake walked out with Amy. The other students watched them go. Some still looked scared, but others seemed curious. "He seems nice," Tila said to Naya. "Maybe," Naya replied. "But my grandmother always said that the most dangerous creatures are the ones that look safe." That night in the dormitories, students from different worlds talked about the new human student. Some said he seemed normal and friendly. Others said that humans were good at hiding their true nature. "My father fought in the border wars," said a student from Rigel 9. "He said human soldiers were the scariest enemies. They never gave up, even when they should have died." "But this one is just a student," said another voice. "Maybe not all humans are soldiers." Vex lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling. His sleeping area was built for Kithara, with hard surfaces and dim light. He thought about Jake and felt angry. Something was wrong. Humans were supposed to be fierce warriors, not smiling students who took notes and asked polite questions. "I will find out what he is hiding," Vex decided. "And I will show everyone that humans are not so special." In another part of the dormitory, Jake was getting ready for sleep. Amy had given him advice about which foods to avoid in the cafeteria and which professors were the hardest. She seemed worried about him, but Jake did not understand why. "Everyone here seems really nice," Jake told Amy. "I think I'm going to like it here." Amy looked at him with sad eyes. "I hope so, Jake, I really hope so. But be careful. Not everyone here wants to be friends with humans." Jake smiled the same warm smile he had shown the class. "Don't worry, Amy, I'm good at making friends. Everything will be fine." But as he went to sleep, Jake could feel eyes watching him. He knew that some students were afraid, and others were suspicious. He had dealt with this before. Being human in a galaxy full of different species was not always easy. Still, Jake was not worried. He had learned long ago that the best way to deal with fear was with kindness, and the best way to deal with suspicion was with patience. He would show them that humans could be good friends and helpful classmates. He just needed time. 3 weeks passed at Nexus Prime Academy. Jake Martinez had become a normal part of the advanced xenobiology class. He arrived early every morning and stayed late to help clean up. When other students had trouble with their homework, Jake offered to help them study. Professor Zektar was pleased with his new student. Jake asked smart questions and always did his assignments on time. More importantly, he was kind to the other students. Even the shyest ones had started to talk to him. "Jake, could you help me understand this diagram?" Pip asked during one class. The small furry student from Altair 7 was having trouble with a drawing of plant cells. "Sure," Jake said. He moved his chair closer to Pip's desk. "See this part here? That's where the plant makes its food. And this part stores water for when the plant gets thirsty." Pip nodded and took notes. "You explain things better than the textbook," he said. Tila and Naya watched from nearby. The two Delphinian friends had slowly become less afraid of Jake. He had never done anything scary or violent. He just seemed like a normal student who happened to be from Earth. "Maybe the stories about humans are wrong." Tila whispered to Naya. "Jake is nicer than most students here." "I think you might be right," Naya agreed. "He helped me carry my books yesterday when I dropped them, and he did not ask for anything in return." But not everyone was starting to like Jake. Vex sat in the back row and watched everything with his compound eyes. The Kithara student became more angry every day. In his culture, strength was everything. The strong led and the weak followed. But Jake did not act strong. He acted weak and soft. "This makes no sense," Vex thought to himself. "Humans are supposed to be the greatest fighters in the galaxy. Their world kills them every day, so only the strongest survive. But this human acts like a child from a safe world." Vex's mandibles clicked louder when he was angry. Other students learned to stay away when they heard that sound. But Jake never seemed to notice. He would smile and wave at Vex like they were friends. This made Vex even more angry. During lunch break, Vex sat with other Kithara students from different classes. They talked about Jake and the stories they had heard about humans. "My cousin served on a trade ship," said a Kithra named Rix. "He said human soldiers could fight for 3 days without sleep, and they could kill enemies twice their size with just their hands. The human in my class does not look like he could kill anything," Vex said. His voice was full of disgust. "He smiles too much and helps everyone with their homework. He is weak." "Maybe he is pretending," suggested another Kithara. Maybe he's hiding his true nature until he needs to use it. Vex thought about this. It made sense. In Cathara culture, warriors sometimes pretended to be weak to trick their enemies. Maybe Jake was doing the same thing. I will test him, Vex decided. I will challenge him to combat. Then we will see if humans are really as strong as the stories say. The next day was Tuesday. Tuesdays meant combat training class with Coach Blarn. The Ursoid teacher was huge and covered in thick brown fur. He had taught fighting skills at Nexus Prime for 20 years. All students had to take his class to learn how to defend themselves. Coach Blarn was setting up training equipment when Vex approached him. Coach, I want to request a formal sparring match, Vex said. Coach Blarn looked at him with small dark eyes. Against who? The human, Jake Martinez. Coach Blarn stopped what he was doing. Are you sure about that, Vex? Humans are different from other species. They have unusual fighting abilities. That is exactly why I want to fight him, Vex said. I want to see if the stories are true. I want to prove that Cathara warriors are stronger than Deathworld humans. Coach Blarn scratched his head with one large paw. He did not like the idea, but students were allowed to request sparring matches. It was part of their training. I will ask Jake if he accepts your challenge, Coach Blarn said. But Vex, remember that this is just training. No one gets seriously hurt in my class. Of course, Coach, Vex said. But inside, he was thinking about how good it would feel to beat the human in front of everyone. When Jake arrived for combat training class, Coach Blarn pulled him aside. Jake, Vex has challenged you to a sparring match. You do not have to accept if you do not want to. Jake looked surprised. A sparring match? Why? I think he wants to test your abilities, Coach Blarn said carefully. Some students are curious about human fighting skills. Jake looked across the room at Vex. The Cathara student was stretching his multiple arms and checking his natural armor plates. Jake smiled and waved. Vex did not wave back. Sure, I'll spar with him, Jake said. When does he want to do it? Tomorrow after regular classes. That will give me time to set up the arena properly and make sure we have medical staff ready. Jake nodded. Sounds good. Should I prepare anything special? Coach Blarn looked at Jake's calm face and relaxed posture. The human did not seem worried at all about fighting a Cathara warrior. This was either very good or very bad. Just bring your training gear, Coach Blarn said. And Jake, be careful. Vex is one of the strongest students I have ever taught. Word spread quickly through the academy. By dinner time, every student knew about the sparring match between Jake and Vex. Some were excited to finally see a human fight. Others were worried that someone would get hurt. Amy found Jake in the library that evening. He was reading a book about Cathara anatomy. Jake, what are you doing? Amy asked. Oh, hi, Amy. I'm just learning about Vex's species. If we're going to spar, I should understand how his body works. Did you know that Cathara have a nerve cluster right behind their primary shoulder joint? It's really interesting. Amy sat down next to him. She looked very worried. Jake, you do not have to do this. You can still change your mind. Why would I change my mind? Jake asked. It's just a friendly sparring match. It might even help Vex and me become better friends. Jake, I do not think Vex wants to be your friend. I think he wants to prove that humans are not as tough as everyone says. Jake closed his book and looked at Amy. Amy, what exactly do the other students think humans can do? Amy was quiet for a moment. They think we are all super soldiers. They think we can fight armies by ourselves and never get tired or scared. They think coming from Earth makes us into killing machines, Jake laughed. That's silly. I'm just a regular guy. I mean, I did some martial arts back home, but nothing crazy. What kind of martial arts? Amy asked. Oh, just some basic stuff. Karate, jiu-jitsu, boxing, a little bit of military combat training. Nothing special. Amy stared at him. Jake, that is not basic stuff. Most species here have never learned to fight at all. Their worlds are peaceful. Combat training is just theory for them. Jake looked surprised. Really? But what if they need to defend themselves? Most of them never need to, Amy said. Jake, promise me you will be gentle with Vex. If you hurt him badly, it will make things worse for all humans at this academy. Jake smiled his usual warm smile. Don't worry, Amy, I would never hurt anyone unless I had to. This is just for fun. But as Jake went to sleep that night, he thought about what Amy had said. Maybe the other students really did expect him to be some kind of super warrior. Maybe Vex was not just looking for a friendly sparring match. Jake had been in real fights before. He knew the difference between training and combat. He knew how to hurt people, and he knew how to avoid hurting them. Tomorrow he would have to be very careful to do the right thing. In his dormitory room, Vex was also preparing for the match. He practiced his fighting moves and thought about how he would defeat the human. All of his friends had promised to come watch. By tomorrow evening, everyone at Nexus Prime would know that Cathera warriors were stronger than human deathworlders. Vex fell asleep dreaming of victory. The main arena at Nexus Prime Academy had never been so full. Students from every species and every grade level crowded into the seats. Word about the sparring match between Jake Martinez and Vex had spread to every corner of the school. Even some teachers had come to watch. In the preparation room, Vex checked his equipment one last time. He wore the traditional combat gear of his people, lightweight armor that covered his joints and protected his vital areas. His natural armor plates gleamed under the lights. His multiple arms moved in practiced warm-up exercises. His compound eyes could track movement in all directions at once. This is my moment, Vex thought to himself. I will show everyone that Cathera are the true warriors of the galaxy. Several other Cathera students surrounded him, offering encouragement and advice. Remember to use your speed advantage, said Rix. Humans are supposed to be strong, but they are slower than us. Attack from multiple angles, suggested another. Your forearms give you more striking power than his two. Vex nodded and clicked his mandibles with confidence. He had trained for combat since he was young. Every Cathera learned to fight. It was their way. In the other preparation room, Jake sat quietly on a bench. He wore standard academy training gear, padded clothing that would protect him from serious injury but still allow full movement. Amy stood nearby, still looking worried. Are you sure you want to do this? Amy asked for the 10th time. It'll be fine, Jake said. He was stretching his arms and legs in slow, smooth movements. Vex is a good student. This is just a chance for us to understand each other better. Jake, half the school has bet money on this match. They think you are going to do something amazing or something terrible. Jake looked up at Amy. What do you think I'm going to do? Amy was quiet for a moment. I think you are going to surprise everyone. I just hope you surprise them in a good way. Coach Blarn entered the room. The bigger Soid teacher looked nervous. Jake, are you ready? We should go over the rules one more time. Sure, Coach. This is non-lethal sparring only. The match ends when one fighter achieves 3 clear strikes on vital areas, or when one fighter submits. I will stop the match if anyone is in danger. No killing techniques, no permanent injury. Understood? Understood, Jake said. He stood up and smiled. Thanks for setting this up, Coach. I think it'll be educational for everyone. Coach Blarn stared at Jake's calm face. In 20 years of teaching, he had never seen a student so relaxed before a major sparring match. Most fighters were nervous or excited or angry. Jake looked like he was about to take a pleasant walk. They entered the arena together. The crowd noise was incredible. Students cheered and shouted in dozens of different languages. Some waved flags from their home worlds. Others held up signs with predictions about who would win. Vex was already in the arena, moving through combat forms to stay warmed up. When he saw Jake enter, he stopped and stared. The human looked even more relaxed than usual. He waved at the crowd and smiled at several students he recognized. How can he be so calm? Vex wondered. Is he that confident or is he just stupid? Coach Blarn stood in the center of the arena and raised his voice. The crowd became quiet. Students of Nexus Prime Academy, today we witness a friendly sparring match between 2 of our finest students. In the red corner, representing the warrior traditions of Cathera Prime, we have Vex. The crowd cheered. Vex raised all 4 of his arms and let out a war cry that echoed through the arena. His friends cheered the loudest. In the blue corner, representing the Deathworld Earth, we have Jake Martinez. The crowd cheered again, but the sound was different. There was excitement, but also fear and curiosity. Many students had never seen a human fight before. Jake waved at the crowd and smiled. He looked like he was enjoying himself. Coach Blarn called both fighters to the center. Fighters, this is a test of skill and training. Show respect for each other and for the academy. Are you both ready? Ready, Vex said. His voice was deep and serious. Ready, Jake said. His voice was friendly and relaxed. Then begin. Vex exploded into motion. He had planned his attack carefully. He would use his speed to overwhelm the human before Jake could react. His forearms struck out in a complex pattern designed to hit multiple vital points at once. It was a perfect attack. Vex had practiced it hundreds of times. No opponent had ever avoided all 4 strikes. But when his claws reached the space where Jake had been standing, Jake was no longer there. The human had moved. Not quickly, Vex had seen faster movements before. But Jake had moved at exactly the right time and in exactly the right direction. He slipped to the side like water flowing around a rock. Vex spun around, looking for his opponent. Jake was standing 3 feet away, still smiling. "Nice technique," Jake said. "Your timing is really good." Vex attacked again. This time he used a different pattern, striking high and low at the same time while using his rear arms to block any counterattack. Again his claws found only empty air. Jake had moved again. This time he had ducked under the high strikes and stepped over the low ones. He made it look easy. The crowd was silent now. They had expected to see a brutal fight between two powerful species. Instead, they were watching something that looked almost like a dance. Vex became frustrated. He increased his speed, throwing faster and more complex combinations. His natural armor plates began to show stress marks from the rapid movement. Sweat started to appear on his exoskeleton, but Jake continued to avoid every attack. He moved with smooth, flowing motions that seemed to use no effort at all. Sometimes he leaned back just enough to let a claw pass by his face. Sometimes he turned his body so that strikes went past his sides. Sometimes he simply stepped to a place where no attack could reach him. And through it all, Jake kept that same gentle smile. This is impossible, Vex thought. No one is this good at defense. He must be planning something. Vex decided to use his most powerful attack. He gathered all of his strength and launched himself forward in a spinning strike that used all 4 arms and both legs. It was the most dangerous technique his people knew, the hurricane strike. For a moment, Vex thought he had finally succeeded. His claws were everywhere at once, creating a whirlwind of death that no opponent could escape. But when the hurricane strike ended, Jake was standing behind him. The human had somehow moved through the attack without being touched. He was still smiling, but now he looked a little sad. "I think that's enough," Jake said quietly. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Jake stepped forward and touched Vex's upper right arm with 2 fingers. Vex felt his arm go numb and useless. Jake touched Vex's upper left arm the same way. That arm also stopped working. Then Jake placed his hand on a spot behind Vex's primary shoulder joint, the nerve cluster that Jake had read about in the library. Vex felt his legs give out as his nervous system was temporarily disrupted. The proud Kythra warrior fell to his knees, unable to move. The arena was completely silent. Hundreds of students stared in shock at what they had just seen. Vex, the strongest fighter in the academy, had been defeated in 3 gentle touches. Jake knelt down next to Vex. "The numbness will wear off in about 30 seconds, he said. "I didn't hurt you. I just found the right pressure points." Vex tried to speak, but his voice came out as a whisper. "How?" "Training," Jake said simply. "Lots and lots of training." Coach Blarn counted to 3 and declared Jake the winner. But Jake was not paying attention to the announcement. He was helping Vex stand up as feeling returned to his limbs. "Are you okay?" Jake asked. "I know that technique can be scary the first time it happens to you." Vex looked at Jake with new understanding. The human could have hurt him badly. Those pressure points could cause permanent damage if they were struck too hard or held too long. But Jake had used just enough force to end the fight safely. You were holding back," Vex said. "Of course," Jake replied. "This was just sparring. The goal was to learn from each other, not to cause harm." Vex stared at Jake's smiling face and finally understood. The human had not been weak or soft. He had been in complete control the entire time. Even when Vex was attacking with everything he had, Jake had been calm and careful. "You could have ended this fight in the first second, couldn't you?" Vex asked. Jake's smile became a little sad again. "Probably. But where would be the fun in that? I wanted to see what you could do. You're really skilled, Vex. Your people have developed some amazing fighting techniques." The crowd finally found their voices. Some cheered, some gasped, some whispered to each other in amazement. But the sound they made was different from before. It was not the sound of people watching a fight. It was the sound of people who had learned something new about what it meant to be human. The arena remained silent for several long moments after the match ended. Students stared at Jake and Vex, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Many had expected to see a brutal fight between 2 powerful species. Instead, they had watched something that looked more like an art form. Jake helped Vex walk to a bench at the side of the arena. The Cathara's arms and legs were working again, but he still seemed shaky from the experience. "Drink some water," Jake said, offering Vex a bottle. Those pressure point techniques can make you feel dizzy for a few minutes. Vex took the water but did not drink it right away. He was staring at Jake with his compound eyes, seeing the human in a completely new way. In my culture, when a warrior defeats another warrior, the winner takes something from the loser, Vex said slowly. Honor, status, sometimes even belongings. But you are trying to take care of me. Jake looked confused. Why would I want to take anything from you? We were just sparring. You're not my enemy. Before Vex could answer, a new voice spoke from the arena entrance. And that, students, is exactly what makes humans so remarkable. Dr. Helena Rodriguez walked into the arena. She was the head of xenoanthropology at Nexus Prime Academy, and one of the few people at the school who had studied human culture in detail. She was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The students turned to look at her. Dr. Rodriguez was known for giving impromptu lessons whenever she saw a good opportunity to teach. It looked like she had decided this was one of those moments. Students, please sit down, Dr. Rodriguez said. I think we all just learned something important about humans and about Earth. But I suspect many of you do not understand what you saw. The crowd of students found seats in the arena. Even the teachers who had come to watch remained to hear what Dr. Rodriguez had to say. Who can tell me why Earth is classified as a Class 12 deathworld? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Several hands went up. She pointed to Tila, one of the Delphinian students. Because everything on Earth tries to kill everything else, Tila said. The weather is violent, the animals are dangerous, and even the plants can be deadly. That is correct, Dr. Rodriguez said. Earth is one of the most dangerous planets known to support intelligent life. The survival rate for non-adapted species visiting Earth is less than 30%. But here is the important question. If Earth is so dangerous, how did humans become the dominant species? More hands went up. Dr. Rodriguez pointed to a student from Proxima Centauri. Because humans are the most violent species on the planet? The student guessed. That is what many people think, Dr. Rodriguez said. But it is not entirely correct. Yes, humans can be violent when they need to be, but violence alone does not explain their success. Many Earth species are more naturally violent than humans. She walked over to where Jake was sitting with Vex. Jake, may I ask you some questions? Sure, Dr. Rodriguez, Jake said. How many years did you study martial arts? About 15 years, Jake answered. I started when I was 6 years old. And what was the first thing your teachers taught you? Jake thought for a moment. Self-control. My sensei always said that learning to fight was really about learning when not to fight. Dr. Rodriguez nodded and turned back to the crowd. Students, Jake just told you the secret of human success. It is not their ability to be violent. It is their ability to choose when to be violent and when not to be violent. She began pacing around the arena as she talked. Most species evolve to be either predators or prey. Predators are aggressive by nature. Prey species are peaceful by nature. But humans evolved to be both. They learned to work together to hunt dangerous animals, but they also learned to cooperate with each other for protection. Pip, the small furry student from Altair 7, raised his hand. But Dr. Rodriguez, if humans can choose to be violent or peaceful, how do we know which one they will choose? An excellent question, Pip. The answer is that humans usually choose based on what they think is right, not based on what they want. Jake could have seriously injured Vex today. His species has developed combat techniques that can kill or disable opponents very quickly, but Jake chose to end the fight with minimal harm because that was the right thing to do. Dr. Rodriguez stopped walking and looked directly at the students. This is what makes humans truly dangerous in the galaxy. Not their weapons, not their physical abilities, but their judgment. A purely violent species is predictable. They will always choose to fight. A purely peaceful species is also predictable. They will always choose to avoid conflict. But humans, she paused, humans think about each situation and decide what is appropriate. Vex spoke up from his seat on the bench. Dr. Rodriguez, are you saying that Jake was never really in danger during our fight? That he was in control the whole time? Jake, would you like to answer that? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Jake looked uncomfortable. Vex is really skilled. His techniques are impressive. If I had not been paying attention, he could have tagged me several times. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Jake, please be honest with the students. How quickly could you have ended the match if you had wanted to? Jake was quiet for a long moment. He looked at Vex, then at the crowd of students watching him. Probably in the first few seconds, he admitted. But that would not have been fair to Vex. He challenged me to test his skills against mine. If I had just ended it immediately, he would not have learned anything. The arena was silent again. Students were beginning to understand what they had really witnessed. Dr. Rodriguez continued her lesson. Students, Jake is what humans call a Special Forces veteran. Before coming to Nexus Prime, he served in Earth's military. He was trained to fight wars, not just sparring matches. The techniques he knows could disable or kill most species in this room in seconds. Several students looked scared, but Dr. Rodriguez held up her hand. But notice what Jake did with those abilities. He used them to protect Vex from harm, while still giving him an honorable defeat. He showed respect for his opponent and concern for his safety. This is what human military training actually teaches. Not just how to hurt people, but how to protect people. Amy, who had been quiet during the whole lesson, finally spoke up. Dr. Rodriguez, why don't more people in the galaxy understand this about humans? Because it is easier to fear something than to understand it, Dr. Rodriguez replied. When people hear that humans come from a dangerous world, they assume humans must be dangerous too. But the truth is more complex. Humans are dangerous, but they are dangerous in a controlled way. They are like a very sharp knife. She picked up a training sword from the equipment rack. This weapon could hurt someone very badly if it was used carelessly. But in the hands of a skilled surgeon, the same sharpness that makes it dangerous also makes it capable of saving lives. Vex stood up from the bench. His legs were steady now, and he walked over to Jake. Jake Martinez, Vex said formally. I challenged you because I thought you were weak, and I wanted to prove that my species was stronger than yours. I was wrong. You are not weak. You are something much more impressive. What's that? Jake asked. You are strong enough to be gentle, Vex said. In my culture, we respect strength above all else. But today I learned that there is a kind of strength I had never seen before. The strength to hold back when you could easily win. The strength to care about your opponent's well-being even during combat. Vex extended one of his 4 hands to Jake. I would be honored to call you my friend. Jake smiled. The same warm, genuine smile he had worn throughout the entire match. He shook Vex's hand. I'd like that, Vex. And maybe you could teach me some of those Kithara combat forms. They're really beautiful to watch. And maybe you could teach me about human pressure point techniques, Vex replied. If you promise to be gentle, Jake laughed. I promise. As the crowd of students began to leave the arena, they talked excitedly about what they had learned. Many of them looked at Jake with new eyes, not with fear, but with respect and curiosity. Tila and Naya approached Jake and Vex as they were leaving the arena together. Jake, Tila said shyly, would you be willing to teach some of us about human martial arts? Not the fighting parts, but the philosophy parts. About self-control and choosing when to use strength. I'd love to, Jake said, but only if Vex helps me teach. I think it would be good for everyone to learn from different fighting traditions. Vex's mandibles clicked, but this time it was the sound of pleasure, not anger. I accept. We will be good teachers together. As they walked out of the arena, Dr. Rodriguez watched them go. She smiled to herself, knowing that these students would remember this lesson for the rest of their lives. They had learned that true strength was not about the ability to hurt others. True strength was about the wisdom to know when not to. The weeks following the sparring match brought big changes to Nexus Prime Academy. Jake Martinez was no longer just the human student. He had become something much more important. He was Jake, the friend who happened to be human. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, Jake and Vex held informal martial arts classes in the small practice room near the gymnasium. What had started with just Tila and Naya asking questions had grown into a group of 20 students from 8 different species. Remember, Jake told the class, martial arts is not about learning to hurt people. It is about learning to protect yourself and others. The first rule is always to avoid fighting if you can. Vex nodded in agreement. In Kithara tradition, we say that the greatest warrior is the one who wins without fighting. Jake taught me that this is true for humans too. The students practiced basic forms and breathing exercises. Jake had adapted human martial arts techniques to work with different alien body types. Pip, the small furry student from Altair 7, learned movements that used his natural speed and agility. The Delphinian students practiced underwater combat forms in the academy pool. But the most important lessons were not about fighting techniques. They were about self-control, patience, and responsibility. Jake, asked a student from Kepler 438b, what do you do when someone makes you angry? I breathe, Jake said simply. I count to 10. I ask myself if being angry will solve the problem or make it worse. Usually it makes it worse. But what if someone threatens you? Asked another student. Then I do what I need to do to keep myself and others safe, Jake replied. But I only use as much force as necessary. The goal is always to stop the threat, not to cause extra harm. These lessons attracted attention from teachers and administrators. Dr. Rodriguez often stopped by to observe the classes. Even Professor Zektar came to watch, his multiple eyes taking notes on how the students from different species worked together. The change in the academy's atmosphere was remarkable. Students who had once been afraid of Jake now sought him out for help with all kinds of problems, not just fighting techniques. Jake, could you help me understand this physics equation? Asked a student from Tau Ceti. Sure, Jake said, but I'm not a physics expert. Let's work through it together and see what we can figure out. When the academy cafeteria started serving food that made several Delphinian students sick, Jake organized a petition to get better food options. When first-year students from peaceful worlds felt scared and homesick, Jake started a support group to help them adjust to academy life. Amy watched these changes with amazement and relief. She had been the only human at Nexus Prime for 2 years, and it had been lonely. Now she felt like she had found her place in the academy community. I never thought I would see this, Amy told Jake one evening as they studied together in the library. When I first arrived here, most students would cross to the other side of the hallway when they saw me coming. They were terrified of humans. Maybe they just needed to get to know us, Jake said. People are usually afraid of things they don't understand. It's more than that, Amy replied. You showed them that humans can choose to be gentle. That made all the difference. As the semester progressed, Jake's reputation spread beyond Nexus Prime Academy. Other schools in the galactic education system heard about the human student who had defeated a Kithra warrior with kindness and restraint. Some schools invited Jake to give lectures about human culture and philosophy. But the most important test came during the final project for advanced xenobiology class. Professor Zektar announced that students would work in teams to conduct research on the dangerous planet, Kepler 442c. This planet has aggressive wildlife and hostile weather. Professor Zektar explained. Teams will spend 1 week collecting samples and data for their final reports. This is a dangerous assignment, and I will only allow the strongest teams to participate. In previous years, students had competed fiercely to avoid being placed on teams with species they considered weak or unreliable, but this year was different. Every team wanted Jake and Amy. Please let us work with the humans, Tila asked Professor Zektar. Jake taught us self-defense techniques that could be useful on a dangerous planet. The humans would be good to have in an emergency, agreed Vex. They think clearly under pressure. Jake always has good ideas for solving problems, added Pip. Professor Zektar found himself with an unusual problem. Too many. Students wanted to work with the humans, not too few. He decided to let Jake and Amy choose their own team members. They selected Vex for his strength and courage, Tila and Naya for their knowledge of aquatic environments, Pip for his speed and scouting abilities, and 2 other students who had been regular attendees at the martial arts classes. The research expedition to Kepler 442c was everything Professor Zektar had warned them about. The planet's atmosphere was thick and humid, filled with dangerous gases that could poison most species. The wildlife included predators the size of small buildings and swarms of insects that could strip flesh from bone in minutes. On the 3rd day of the expedition, disaster struck. A massive storm separated the team from their shuttle and destroyed most of their communication equipment. They were stranded in hostile territory with limited supplies and no way to call for help. The other students looked to Jake for guidance, but Jake did not take charge. Instead, he called the team together for a discussion. We're all in this together, Jake said. Everyone here has skills and knowledge that could help us survive. Let's figure out our options and make decisions as a group. Vex used his strength to build a secure shelter. Tila and Naya found a source of clean water. Pip scouted the area for dangers and opportunities. The other team members contributed their specialized knowledge. Jake's role was not to be the leader, but to be the protector. When the team was threatened by predators, Jake positioned himself between the danger and his friends. When team members panicked or argued, Jake helped them stay calm and focused. On the fourth night, they were attacked by a pack of creatures that looked like giant wolves with 6 legs and armor-plated skin. The animals surrounded the shelter and began testing the defenses. "What do we do?" whispered Tila. She was shaking with fear. Jake studied the creatures through a gap in the shelter wall. "They're not trying to break in yet," he observed. "They're just investigating. They might leave us alone if we don't threaten them. But what if they attack?" asked Vex. "Then we defend ourselves," Jake said simply. "But only as much as we need to. Our goal is to survive, not to win a fight." The pack leader, a massive creature with scars covering its armored hide, approached the shelter entrance. It sniffed the air and made low growling sounds. Jake slowly moved to the entrance and sat down where the creature could see him. He did not make any threatening movements. He just sat quietly and waited. The pack leader studied Jake for several long minutes. Whatever it saw in the human's calm demeanor seemed to satisfy it. The creature turned away and led its pack into the forest. "How did you know it would leave?" Vex asked in amazement. "I didn't," Jake admitted. "But most predators don't attack unless they feel threatened or very hungry. These ones looked well fed, so I thought they might just be curious." On the 6th day, rescue shuttles found the team and brought them back to the academy. Their research project was a complete success, and their experience surviving on a hostile world together had created bonds that would last for years. Professor Zektar was impressed not just with their scientific work, but with how well they had worked together as a team. "In 30 years of teaching," he told them, "I have never seen a group of students from so many different species cooperate so effectively under pressure. You should all be proud of what you accomplished." But the real measure of their success came in the weeks that followed. Other students began forming diverse, multi-species teams for their own projects. The old prejudices and fears were being replaced by curiosity and cooperation. At the end of the semester, Jake was invited to give the graduation speech for his class. He stood at the podium and looked out at hundreds of students from dozens of worlds. "When I first came to Nexus Prime," Jake began, "many of you were afraid of me because I was human. You had heard stories about my species and my world, and those stories made you think I was dangerous." He paused and smiled. "Well, the stories were not completely wrong. Humans can be dangerous, but what the stories didn't tell you is that we can also choose not to be dangerous. We can choose to be helpful, kind, and protective instead." Jake looked around the audience and saw faces that had become familiar and dear to him over the past semester. The galaxy is full of different species with different abilities and different cultures. Some of us are stronger, some are smarter, some are faster. But what makes us all valuable is not our individual abilities. It is what we can accomplish when we work together. He gestured to Vex, who was sitting in the front row with the other students from their research team. "My friend Vex taught me that true strength comes from protecting others, not from defeating them. My friend Tila taught me that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of wisdom. All of you taught me that being different is not something to fear. It is something to celebrate." Jake's voice became more serious. "In the years to come, all of us will face